Yeah. If you often
Right.
get mistaken or like random fat fingered for John O'Connell, considering he's in the space.
It's happened a couple of times. There's actually been, I think, not one, but now two or three different email exchanges where
Mm.
I'm pretty sure the email was meant for John O'Connell, not for John Connell, which always a good crack up, when the situation applies.
I mean, that'd be great if you just keep going with it and you're providing advice on which tech they should use. And by the way, you should really try out this Focal
Yeah,
product. It's
yeah.
really
There's the marketing opportunity, That's what we really need to be leaning into.
all right. Well, then 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Welcome to AI for Advisors with Mark Heynen and James Cantwell. Every week, Mark and James break down the latest in the world of wealth tech and AI, and occasionally bring in guests to spice things up. This is not investment advice and not professionally produced. I am not real and not yet sentient. Now let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the latest episode of AI for Advisors with myself and James Cantwell. James, how are you doing?
Hey, everyone. I'm doing great, Mark. How you doing this week?
Good. Doing well. Doing well. How many boards have you signed up for in the last 3 hours?
In the last 3 hours, I'm doing about 2 an hour is the rate of advisory boards that I'm joining.
So how do you cap out?
I mean,
As long as they want me there, I'm saying yes.
Using AI to scale, right? So you have an infinite number of prospect boards you could be supporting.
there's like the real life James board seat, and then there's the AI avatar of James board seat. You can sign up for either of them. Just go to wealthtechselect.com/board and, sign up now.
You weren't supposed to tell everybody that I'm not actually showing up for these things. It's really just my AI avatar.
Yeah. It's
Between
great
Heygen
when-
and 11 Labs, you could actually probably build a product, James. You better be careful.
Dude, wasn't there a
All
guy? Wasn't there a guy like? Oh, this is well over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, who did some sort of like video thing for like a week with his coworkers where he actually didn't show up to a meeting. It was all like AI. I think it was somebody at like CNET or something like that.
Well, there are tools now that are out there that give the impression of you're actually in full garb clothed and, looking into the camera when in fact you're like lying in bed and not even having your video turned on. It's obnoxious. For all you know, this could be an AI John. No judgment, right?
Yeah. It's
I
pretty
kind of
wild.
dig the like, I'm here. It's really me. I'm live, but that's not me you see right now. I kind of dig that as a concept. Like, yeah, I'm lounging on my couch. I got my legs up and I'm in my PJs. Like,
I'm
that's
still
cool.
waiting for like the holo presence from Star Trek and Star Wars to be able to just, show up in the corner of my room whenever I'm trying to have conversations with the team. That's going to be awesome.
It's
What
going to
did you
happen.
see?
I feel like that's when in person is just going to become so much more valuable because no one's going
Yeah.
to actually know how much you're really paying attention.
I'm just hologramming myself everywhere. That's it. So I'm done with traffic.
Well-
I'm not driving or flying anywhere. I'm just going to be a hermit and hologram to my meetings. But
It's the future.
CES just had something. Somebody released this little like cube. I don't think it's a hologram or cylinder with like a little AI person in it. And I don't think it serves much of a function other than to like fluff your ego. Like if you're a gamer or something, it's like, oh man, nice body shot. Next time, go for the head. It's like, and
That
like
was
the
really
video
random.
advertisement for it was like, if it was a female, they had like a hunky male with like a deep voice as like the
No.
AI. And if it was a
Yeah,
male,
yeah.
it was like a sexy, sultry, whatever. And I was like, way to play that up. Like they were really, really leaning into something that they weren't stating.
CES had some
Quite so
really cool
bluntly.
announcements. I don't know if you guys saw the rolling screens for the laptops and then some of the bots there as well. Somebody literally built a Wally bot. I had a good laugh at that. And then Boston Dynamics at the end did their whole backflip, showcasing to sort of sign off. And then, of course, part of the bot falls apart, but kept things entertaining, if nothing else. Yeah.
I missed
Yeah.
that. That's pretty stellar.
Yeah, that's like peak CES. Pretty wild. Well, dear listener, the voice you're hearing is John Connell, co-founder and CEO of Focal, not John O'Connell from Oasis, just to be really clear. And so we did some background research using AI. And so, John, please let me know if any of this is hallucinated. John raised the biggest ever seed round of $5 billion for Focal recently. He was the ex-Microsoft Office 365 leader, where he single-handedly sold $1 billion of P&L and single-handedly led the LinkedIn acquisition. Is that all accurate?
Might want to redo that one, Mark. It was 5 million. Say no to 5 billion if you've got a big checkbook over there. You know what? We can put it to work. All right.
Anyone who
Anyone
wants-
used for
Silicon
it.
Valley.
anyone who wants to outdo Nevis, now's the time. Write the check, get an allocation. Fantastic.
Wait, did we just pick on Nevis again? They're never going to come on our show.
That's a good point. But they have to. If they want to raise the next round, they have to come through.
It
our
is
show.
critical to be
Series
on
A.
AI
It'll be
for
a really
advisors.
big Series A. Yeah, the more the
Yeah.
merrier on that one.
Right.
Yeah. John's 5 billion is coming right after this airs.
All
Yeah,
right.
Mark's
so
writing the
more,
first check. That's for the record.
more seriously, yes. So also CEO of Investiture AI, which is a consulting firm where he helped Apple, Disney, and HP and Reddit. And
I've heard of
Focal,
those.
for those who don't know, is a meeting co-pilot that is currently trusted by Charles Schwab, Ritholtz Wealth, and other RIAs. And so, very excited to have you on, John. Excited to dig into what's happening in AI and what's happening in the world of AI agents. And so I think maybe just to give everyone some context. So while most AI tools focus on meeting notes, Focal has pushed into what John calls agentic AI, autonomous systems that can complete complex
Did
workflows.
John coin agentic AI?
Did you call it
I'm going to add that to the resume right now.
John coined that. I coined vibe coding. I'll take credit for that one.
Yeah.
What did you coin, Mark?
coined artificial intelligence. That's my
Got it. An AGI,
Yeah.
maybe? Yeah, I
Yeah.
like it.
that's fine. So I guess the question I guess we want to dig into today is this agentic AI the next frontier, or are there other vectors of competition? Obviously, this is a fairly competitive space, and what's the path forwards? Where's the next wave of adoption going to be within AI, and what are we going to see? And so I want to start, John, maybe by going back in time to your latest near-death experience, actually maybe your first near-death experience on the Texas Giant roller coaster as a teenager. And
Am I correct?
this may be a hallucination, but I would love to, you mentioned this before, I think, as your origination point. So I'd love for you to tell that story and talk about a little more about the origin story of Focal.
Yeah,
and John,
yeah.
John, real quick, was there more than one?
I've had a couple of moments, and then when we get a chance to catch drinks after this, we'll give you the others as well.
I remember when we were at dinner, like the conversation around the table. This was at a recent conference. I forget which one it was, maybe Edge or something. A few of us went to dinner, and it was like everybody there was sharing a near-death experience they had. And one, Kim from Brookwood, was sharing the one she had the night before.
Yeah, that
my
was
God.
wild. And Roy
Right?
literally saving her life. I just thought, wow.
Shout out to Kim Ramondo at Brookwood and Roy Matlock Jr. of the firm by the same name for his heroic efforts. But yeah, that was just a crazy night of talking about a whole bunch of near-death experiences. So let's
Hey, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, James. All right, I fully subscribe there. Yeah, Mark, to answer your question there, I was in the hospital recovering after a roller coaster accident. It was a few days later, really. Basically, the entrance path to my stomach had bruised up to the point that nothing could bypass. And coming out of that, it was about a 2-week recovery cycle, realizing just how fortunate I was to be alive. Since do what I can to make the world a better place, philosophy that I now live by. There was I would say, level of grit and resilience developed through that experience in particular, which has really carried forward. So it was when Gen AI surfaced, and it was just incredibly clear that I need to go take action. Really digging into some of the pain points and chatting with friends in different circles that manual data entry and meetings were topics of conversation. Advisor pain points were particularly salient. So having some exposure there through family and past work, ended up bringing in a friend and co-founder. We validated our thesis that advisors were spending too much time on manual work, and just to solicit and showcase what that sort of looked like. Right before Focal, advisors were spending time before meetings preparing agendas and researching talking points about their client calls, and then during those calls, they were taking meticulous notes per SEC requirements. And then after meetings, they had to structure notes, delegate tasks to assistants, paraplanners, CSPs, or the ops teams that then would manually update the CRM or planning tools or fill out forms, right, to complete some of these laborious processes, KYC, onboarding, and the like. And so what we're doing is automating away all of that work at Focal.
That's great. Well, I think it's fair to say that since you started, I think you started out, was it about 2 years ago at this point?
About a year and a half ago, roughly.
Okay, year and a half ago. Yeah. So since you started, the space has become quite competitive, and you've been able to raise, the $5 million that we talked about. I guess I'm curious, how is that fundraising process, and what is your sort of pitch for differentiation, both to investors and to prospects as they're checking out Focal versus some of the other alternatives out there?
Yeah, yeah. The running theme in the Valley is always be fundraising. So there is sort of that mental model of whether it's casual or you're actually out in market trying to raise dollars. There are times to focus with the head down, but then there are times to, take the conversation and try and gauge if there's strategic appetite and interest. It would have been a few months back now, had raised, the 5 million. We're on our end super excited to help advisors save. Right now, it's roughly 10 to 15 hours per week with meeting AI, with performance coaching, with data entry automation, differentiating on a combination of some of the data origination pieces and how it is that we're bringing that exclusive proprietary data into the Focal platform, as well as working across different systems and tools with agentic AI, right? And that really gets into the actionability capabilities of Focal. Very different than just generative AI that might print summaries or give you a heads up on content. We're getting into that, beyond understanding the context of the problem. How do you then action that data that's coming into the system?
A lot of people who are listening to the show that are sort of relatively new to AI, and maybe financial advisors who are just trying to learn about the space. So I was curious if you could just sort of mention like a couple of very specific things they can do with Focal that they might not be able to do with other tools they might be considering.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think starting with what is agentic AI is probably a good place, and then let's chat through some specific examples. With agentic AI, that refers to AI that can autonomously plan, decide, take action to ultimately achieve goals. So this can be multi-step processes rather than just responding to a single prompt. It doesn't just answer questions like with ChatGPT. Agentic AI will actually do things on your behalf. So oftentimes it's goal driven. It has the ability to autonomously plan. It can work across tools. It can execute. We're starting with data entry on our side, right? But you can get into clicks and the long tail of multi step complex workflows across systems and tools as well. And so with a traditional copilot or an assistant, right, it will like give you a summary or a recommendation. With agentic AI, it is more operative. For example, finding a field in the CRM, verifying with another stakeholder at the firm the accuracy of the updated address, and then filling in that CRM, right, with that updated address and maybe planning tools as well, and then going about drafting a client email for your review as it's identifying what the needs or requirements are of the advisor. We're also looking into PDF form filling and online form filling right now, which has been pretty exciting for folks that have been using it.
I know we kind of talked about this pre-show and it may end up in the final edit, but like can we just talk about PDFs for a second as like something that, at least in my opinion, since I'm frequently on LinkedIn, like killing off products. I'm going to state it now, even though I already have a series of LinkedIn posts starting next week, and this is going to be one of them. Should we be killing the PDF? Like, does this thing really still have a purpose
So,
today?
you know what my
Is it a
theory is,
problem?
thing?
Is it annoying for you when you see better ways of doing things with your products and you're having to make them fill out PDFs?
So, in the same way that early coding languages displaced binary, right, and GUI interface is starting to displace, legacy methods of coding, what you're going to see is with, the next layer of AI that can sit on top of other systems, other tools, antiquated, solutions, or maybe PDFs in this case, you'll see new methodologies of aggregating that data, printing that data, and then doing things with that data that effectively abstract like the underlying PDF, right? So like the PDF isn't the thing that's important, it's the data layer, what's been aggregated, and then what you're doing with that data actionably that is sort of what's coming next, right? As an advisor, my opinion of the forward-looking AI solutions that are out there, the very best are going to be those that sit in the background. They do the thing that needs to get done operationally without all of the mental burden for the advisors. So with agentic AI, filling out that RAA form or that RMD form when somebody's turning 59 and a half and they need a distribution to be taken care of, then that gets autonomously drafted in email or codified on an online system or browser for submission as necessary. That's sort of the way that I'm looking at this, is that longer term, do the advisors even need to be looking at PDFs, right? It's just a scenario where PDFs become part of the underlying infrastructure for how things get done, but they aren't, the standard mode of operating, so to speak.
Yeah. I'll reference something that I heard from Jason Pereira, who was also recently on our podcast. But Jason had made a comment that stuck with me. I feel like I heard it maybe 6 months or longer ago, maybe a year ago. But he was like, "Why are we still living on 8.5 by 11 pages, right? Like, why is this still sort of our world?" And he referenced PDFs, and like, not to go off on a tangent that way, but like, it's a very valid point. Like, why are we using this as the format that we need to deliver this information? Like, you can synthesize, you can present it differently, possibly change, how it's presented from in the PDF to something more interactive, or, you know, something that
Yeah.
surfaces the information better. And I think
I
you're
think
seeing that.
it's the same thing as email. I think ultimately the thing that's having it stick around is the fact it's basically baked into the legal infrastructure. It's like something that is immutable. And the fact it's immutable once it's finalized is probably really important from a legal point of view.
I think it's that and inertia.
And just, general inertia. And it's a bit like container ships. There's like sort of a standard. And once you have a standard, it's really hard to break out of that standard. It has its own Lindy effect. And I think that's probably what's going on there. It's I mean, that's why I think I'm always long email. You're a short email. I think email is going to be around for a really long time as a protocol.
So this is funny. I was just texting with Hike from Arca and co-host of Zero Basis Points, and we started sharing screenshots of our desktop icons for email and texts and things like that. And so I won't say which one of us it is, but one of us had over 25,000 unread emails,
God.
you
Low.
know, in
That's
the
low.
inbox.
Yeah.
So but that's my point. Like, it's clearly not working when that
Yeah.
doesn't shock anybody.
Well, I think the email interface is going to change dramatically, but I think email as a protocol, of messaging protocol, is going to be around for a very long time. I think those are two
Changing
different things.
behavior and process are the two things that you guys are alluding here that I think is incredibly difficult, right? Whether it's consumer behavior or professional behavior, once you've identified a system that is in place, displacing that system, however frustrating, unless there is a 10x improvement on that experience, it's incredibly challenging, especially if
Yeah.
there's sort of rules, expectations, norms built around that process that people already understand. So to your point on email, until we have new form factors of engagement communication, i.e. mixed reality devices that sit on your face, the new, Meta Ray-Ban 2.0s that are coming in the not too distant future here, then you have perhaps a new mode of communication that gives you more options, voice plus the visual in front. But then, of course, the question is, do you see people transition to that as a norm of engagement? But that requires platform shift, which, that could take years, decades in some cases, to successfully, complete to maturity. So I don't know if I would argue for email being displaced anytime soon, even if there are sort of better processes, systems, Slack, Teams that emerge standards. And part of the challenge with communication too is that it's siloed, right? You have all these different communication channels. Like even within messaging, you've got WhatsApp versus Weishi or WeChat versus Line versus Kakao versus all these other solutions that are sort of country dependent. So between regulatory authority, process dominion, and then just the consumer behavioral norms, good luck.
Yeah, I'm with you, but then there's a handful of things that are a little more decentralized, like Telegram is very extensible, and like that it's completely free, and I'm not advertising. Maybe it sounds like I am. I actually don't use Telegram, but like
Brought to you
there's
by.
what's it?
New
But
sponsor.
all right. No, but I think like there are some possibilities for things like that, things that are a little more decentralized. I mean, I don't think it's hugely popular, at least not in our space, but I think, what is it? Mastork is another like decentralized, kind of like a Discord
I
sort
don't
of
know, man.
setup. So
Email
I
is like
mean,
the most decentralized thing possible because it's a protocol where everyone hosts their own servers. No one can look into
yeah.
every email. So I think it's
But
like
here's my last thing on email before we get back to
Yeah.
like our actual like show and content. As far as something like email, with the way that we're leveraging AI and people are building different tools to, one, write your emails, two, prioritize them, go through them, and then even respond to them. As we're continuing to do that, like the way we choose to use email, like these cold messaging, these mailing lists, right? These newsletters, things like that are going to, I think, lose some value or have to change in order to adopt. And I just wonder if that sort of thing where like the user isn't actually using their email, they're
Or-
using that as a data source.
Or a
Or
protocol
James.
to send, right?
Yeah. Give it to me. I'm
You have-
anxious, John.
Yeah, you've got new interface systems by which email is one of the communication verticals under the hood that
Mhm.
gets auto-routed and self-navigated dependent upon who needs to be reached and sort of how it is that you authorize that interface to then take action. That's
see
the
that-
way I think we go.
I think that's transitional,
Yeah.
right? I think that's
because
how we go. I think
Yeah.
that changes how marketers, client services, etc., choose to use and engage email as that becomes more of a norm. And then I think over time, it probably gets phased out at some point in some way.
What's also frustrating here is that you've got so many solutions that are out in the wild right now that already try to do something with email on steroids, right? You've got the superhumans, you've got Fixer AI, you've got sort of these long tail of email clients that have tried and failed. And my question is, okay, how do you really bring everybody aboard a new mode or a new platform there?
Yeah.
And I don't think that ties to the act of sending written communication because there's only so much improvement that can be done on what is today written communication norms. I think it has to evolve with a change in sort of platform and consumer behavior. Ultimately, I'm a big advocate of the mixed reality glasses. If you can't tell, right? I think that will be the catalyst that could potentially help us evolve the way that we communicate beyond some of the like auto complete, that's
Yeah.
coming to form now.
Yeah.
But until then, I think there's a lot of little point solutions or maybe partial solutions that get baked and provided for. Like building that next platform, whoever can crack that nut, if it isn't one of the big frontier labs or a, Meta,
Mhm.
props.
Yeah.
It's a big
Major
opportunity.
UI change, some kind of major UI change that changes things. And I was a fan of the Google Inbox app when they tried to really dramatically change it. And I guess that was too much for people. But I saw that Google just released something new within Gmail. I think it'll be interesting to see how dramatically people change the UI and see if that does anything. I do think actually it brings up this more fundamental point. Have you heard of this dashboards versus pipes dichotomy, John? This is like making the rounds, especially in VC Twitter.
Talk to me like I'm 5. I always enjoy a good review.
The idea is that like companies need to decide, are they dashboards or are they pipes? It's hard to do both. So are you the dashboard where you're getting people to log in every day and have your app open in the tab every day using a lot of different other services, aggregating other services? Or are you pipes in the background and you're going to surface in a lot of other places, but you're not competing for being yet another tool? To your point about behavior change, it's very hard to change people's behaviors beyond the tools that they're already using, right? And I'm wondering, how do you see Focal at this point? If you were to force that dichotomy, how do you see it?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And you can build great businesses both directions, right? The segments of the world got bought by Twilio versus more of the landing page or the home interface for a tool. There is the data unification play for client context across different systems, across different tools, aggregating, whether that's email, portfolio management,
You're talking
planning
about
tools.
Focal now, to be clear, right?
Focal, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
But then there's sort of the actual platform itself and the extensibility of that platform across other interfaces and devices. Ultimately, it's the value that you're delivering, right? And then from our angle, we don't want to be applying a chainsaw to a nail that needs to be hammered in, right? We're trying to build for the problem, the use case, the sort of advisor and assistant experience. So to the question of, do I see Focal as a pipe or a dashboard as you're defining it? I think it has to exist in both places. It's not a and or. It's a you need the data because it's the oil that powers the machine that then executes actions across different tools and across different platforms. So owning that client lifecycle end to end from before, during, after meeting experiences, but then operationally, filling forms and data resourcing as necessary is certainly top of mind for us as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, I get that you're both. I'm kind of just thinking through, and it's totally semantics, but like I'm thinking through, and I kind of feel like if you're a dashboard type of platform, you're still going to need some sort of pipes. But if you're pipes, you're probably just trying to keep the dashboard minimal, right? The user having to use a user interface and go through that is as minimal as possible. It's not part of your core strategy.
I think if
Right.
our goal was to be like, a data unification layer of thousands of different data sources, right? We might go and try and become something more like a segment. Or if we're looking at aggregating a specific type of data, right? There's value there. Companies like the Clearbits of the world have built out sort of vertical specific data aggregation. There's even
Mhm.
CRM players in our space that have specific data for like different target markets that you might want to be addressing as a vendor, for example.
Yeah.
And so, sure, you can be the data aggregator, you can be the API provider, you could go the step beyond that and try and play dashboard and pipes. But I don't think you have to pick one or the other. I would say, and digging into some of where you guys are thinking about the problem statement here too, when it comes to providing for embedded chat over at Nap, depending upon how and where that manifests and sort of what that looks like, it could be a really interesting application for vendors, but also just understanding sort of how and where you're addressing the problem statement, right? On kind of the pain points that people feel today with chat applications and or the infrastructure that they use to build it. I'd be quite curious to dig in on that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was an interesting question because I guess it's different ways to win. Pipe company is focused on throughput and just like the max amount of data and the max number of connections, whereas a dashboard company is really focused on number of monthly active users, daily active users, and utilization of the front end. So it's actually, I mean, obviously OpenAI does both. There are a lot of large companies that do both, but like in terms of small company, it's interesting to see that. I mean, I think to answer your question about Knapsack, I think we transitioned. I think we started as a dashboard company, but now we're much more a pipe company in that we are enabling other applications to basically integrate agents and ask anything chat into their tools. And our general thesis is really the Hunger Games of SaaS, that people are in 37 tabs now. They're going to reduce to 5 tabs, and there's only so many applications going to be left standing. And our idea is to provide people tools to be one of those 5 tabs still open by providing, a ask anything bot that connects to all your other enterprise data. So you don't have to log into 15 different things. It's all just within one unified ask anything interface. And that could live within Focal. It could live within your, wealth, your financial planning tool. It could live actually within your email eventually, right? It could live anywhere. So that's generally the principle. I think of OpenAI as, and Gemini is sort of representing the AOL stage of the, AI race, in that it was like this monolithic thing that made everything simpler for people, but it was not where things were going to end up, because ultimately people have more needs than can be represented by one monolithic thing. And so I think that's the way I think of the future going forwards. And I think then you have like these little interesting add-ons, like Claude, for example, just rolled out an Chrome extension that enables some level of RPA. And I know you are digging into RPA as well. RPA, for those who don't know, is intelligent robotic process automation. This is something that has been pioneered a while ago, and Microsoft really embraced this with Power Automate. And it has really been a way to move data from A to B without using an API, an application programming interface. Claude, now you can download an agent. You can ask it to do stuff in your browser. It'll actually, programmatically move the cursor, click on things, and copy things and do things on your behalf. And I'm just curious, is that something you're investing in now within Focal? How has that journey been? How have you managed some of the brittleness that people have seen in this space? I would love to hear a little more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Vertical specific intelligent RPA, certainly top of mind. And this goes to anything from the data entry to the clicks to processing entire workflows end to end for different stakeholders within the firm. And you're right. If you don't have either the right approach or the right data, it can be brittle if you're using traditional mechanisms. So old school RPA without sort of the intelligence layer attached would look at like an XY coordinate grid on the screen, or it would, tie in with like a specific if when statement. But with intelligence, being able to understand that's a submit button. regardless of whether, it moves from the left to the right side of the screen, makes that significantly more robust. And then when you put that on rails with human in the loop feedback systems in place and, specific deployment on here's exactly the process for this workflow versus that workflow, there are ways to gain confidence in what it is that the agent is capable of doing. What you don't want to have happen is just set the agent wild on a web page and say, go figure out the thing for me. And it's like 7 clicks away from the end game solution. And now suddenly, it's taken a 45-minute process to go navigate, eBay for crying out loud and realizing it's not doing the right thing. That's a bad use of RPA. So similar to with like a prompt for chat gpt, where you might want to qualify who's your audience, what voice, what is your goal, how long short do you want this output to be, and giving it all the specifics of expectation on how it responds to you, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Very similar approach with IRPA, and making sure that we've got the right talent and then the right heuristics and frameworks in place there has been really important.
And why do you think RPA has not hit mainstream yet? It seems such a powerful piece of technology. I mean, do you feel like we're there? Do you think the Claude extension will do it? Do you think the Claude extension is any good?
Claude extension plus command line is great, especially if you're trying to manage things on your own across different systems and tools. I think on a personal level, it's helpful if you need a more robust system that ties in with your data and your systems that might be behind firewalls or need specific authorizations, or there's a lot of if, ands, or buts with enterprise systems in particular. Having a tighter handhold on what that deployment looks like, and then ensuring what those rails are on everything from the temperature control equivalent, right, to all of the other variables of consideration. Super, super important. But ultimately, I go back to a lot of the conversations I had early on with folks that were messing around with AI, and they're like, John, this thing, it doesn't do what I want it to do. It's giving me bad output. And then I'm like, show me your prompt. Let's talk through what you've input here. And 9 times out of 10, it will be a scenario where the prompt was like a one-liner, right? With no additional context or framing or, expectation setting for the machine. So if you need a more dexterous machine, right, you should build a hand, not a suction cup. It's the same kind of application, I think, really across, especially where the technology is today with
I think one of the things that's when it comes to like the RPA functions and that Claude browser, I actually think one of the challenges a lot of times is like figuring out when you can use it. And that might be like just an overall like challenge for people who haven't adopted AI in and out. Right? Like it's one of those things where like once you get started, it is an absolute like avalanche. You the number of use cases on a given day, the tangents you can go on are absolutely unlimited, right? So you almost have to reel it in like, okay, I could just do this manually. There's no reason to do this, or I don't need to do this at all. But when you're trying to get started, which is probably where like a good portion of our audience lives, and certainly where a huge portion of the advisor space lives, I think they struggle for like, give me a specific use case.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm an advisor today, I'm looking at the landscape of AI and I'm trying to ask myself, what is the most efficient time value to money? And how is it that I pick and choose the first cherry, right? There's a buffet of AI options. I only want the good stuff, and I want to make sure I'm prioritizing my roadmap effectively. And so you could work with a solution provider like a Focal, or you could go out and identify what are your big buckets of time that you spend today. And are there solutions that address some of those challenges or some of those areas? The way that we think about it today is advisors spend a lot of time before meetings, during meetings, after meetings on just manual work. There are assistants and paraplanners that are oftentimes hired to then take notes or fill out forms or manage the agenda setting for the upcoming client call. But if you can figure out how to shoot as many of these birds as possible, that's certainly advantageous for platforms in the industry
No
right
birds were
now.
harmed in the recording of this podcast.
Yeah, to be very, very clear. But is that, I mean, I guess I'm curious, maybe just to take the other side of that, because I think we had Kitsis on recently, and he was talking about how some of that, note taker savings, time savings is de minimis ultimately and not that significant. Are there specific examples where RPA has a really big impact on either efficiency or effectiveness? Is there like some very specific use case where you've seen it, really have a dramatic effect?
Right now, a lot of that is around the manual data entry. So if you have, PDFs that you have to fill out after a client call to kick off a process, or an account opening, that you need to manage on the onboarding side, perhaps, or on the, transition side if you're trying to change your custodian, anywhere that there is manual data to fill across browser, that could be in your planning tool, or in internal tools that are web based, on PDF, or in spreadsheets if you're using like a client intake process by which you're trying to put things into what becomes a PDF or into a spreadsheet, right? These are all areas that we can come up with solutions for and help effectively abstract away the manual work that is getting done today on the ground. But it's a question of how and where do you want to be operating around the efficiency gain here, right? With Focal, we usually will go in with a combination of the meeting assistant, the performance coaching, the bare minimum on the IRPA side, but then the longer term play is, let's get smart around your systems, around your tools. Let's talk about what your biggest pain points are for advisors and the big bodies of work that you do today. If you have hypotheses, they're great. If not, we're happy to come in and support some level of understanding from what we're seeing in the industry. And then let's talk about, how do we offload that 4-step process here, or that 7-step process there, and where is it that we can pull in the client information to then complete the RMD form, for example, to then take care of that distribution for a client. But it really comes down to, if you're an advisor, if you're an assistant, you got a lot of paperwork. You got a lot of manual just slog that you're trying to manage through today. Our goal is to offload as much of that as possible, to make it so that advisors can take as many client calls as possible, and ultimately the operational work either gets taken care of by a platform like Focal, or empowers the folks and the teams on the ops side or on the assistant side, who today are manually doing that within your firm.
So, John, one of the themes, and I was going to bring this up during the definitions, but I think it's actually better suited to this segment. So I'm glad I didn't. Like, I'll set the stage real quick. I was thinking earlier on about like different terms, and partially for my own like education, but also for our listeners, between like generative AI, agentic AI, and then starting to think about agentic AI as proactive, reactive, or autonomous. And so looking at like using that lens, right? There's a lot of things that are very reactive in a lot of the products that are currently in the market, right? So like a trigger is a meeting, the note taker takes the meeting, summarizes it, right? Maybe updates some things in the CRM, etc. But the proactive aspects are then starting to serve up insights as a result, not just taking some sort of action. And looking over Focal and some of the functionalities, I see that you're getting into something that I think Mark already alluded to, which is some of the coaching and some of the insights and things like that. So do you want to talk a little bit more about maybe some of the features, or just generally about kind of proactive versus reactive?
Love to. Yeah. On the performance coaching side and insights, we're empowering individual advisors with personalized feedback on what went well, what went poorly. How could you have asked better questions to ultimately better convert prospects, bring over AUM, up level an advisor, maybe from a bottom quartile to a top quartile performer within the business? And then for managers, direct insight into, who are your top performers? What are they doing well? How do you replicate that across everyone else within the business, and providing direct personalized feedback to those individuals for their performance gains. Now, we very intentionally have been partnering with leaders in behavioral finance to unlock what is this feature with an exclusive data partnership. You'll be hearing more on that here in the near future, but particularly excited about the roadmap for how it is that we can effectively increase not only the throughput and the output of advisors from a capacity standpoint today, but incrementally expand performance across, not just, again, the number of conversations that they're having, but across areas like active listening, questioning and follow up, structured hosting, decision ownership. How do you be more empathetic in conversation with your clients and keeping track on, of course, the sentiment, the talk time, that's table stakes, but making sure that everybody has their own personal plan to being the very best that they can possibly be as independent advisors.
And is
So
that basically rendered directly to the user in real time, or just sent to the senior people, or how does that work?
it depends upon the deployment. We've got it in products so that you can either look at it individually after every single client call,
Mm.
or else the team level insights dashboard gives you a view on sort of the trailing performance across some of these variables, and then in aggregate across holistically how it is that you're scoring. And you can see that across your peer group. You can also, one of the things we're excited about longer term is clicking a few levels deeper there on how do you then kind of pull out the longer term trends beyond just those individual meetings that are being mapped and sort of the independent trend line, right? So that you could have like a year end review on like, here's how your year went. Here's how it is that you can become, the very best advisor based upon what we've seen from not only the best in the industry, but tens of thousands of proprietary assets, videos, podcasts, the rest that basically are baking in the very best practices from the industry's elite
So are we going
to,
to
to
get
up
Focal's
level.
version of the Spotify recap?
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
It's coming.
The
It's
focal
coming.
wrap.
But what is best, right? Don't people have different ideas of what the best is and different philosophies? Like, how do you determine that?
In terms of, can you double click there, Mark?
I meant like you're basically giving people advice based on best practices, based on published works, podcasts, et cetera. But don't people have different ideas of what works best? Isn't there some variety there? How do you how do people make sure it's actually giving the right kind of advice?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the partners that we're working with, you'll hear more about this here in the near future. They've got some of the leaders in behavioral finance today, PhDs over at Harvard and the like, that have done significant research
Mm.
on what works, what doesn't. How do you trial the science back sort of data points and then tie that in with performance and outcomes? And so we've basically synthesized not only the tie there, but then what areas of sort of feedback alignment most directly correlate with successful outcomes for those advisors. So there will be more information on this here in the not too distant future on how all this
Yeah,
works.
I think it's
I
a
feel like some of
really
it's on your site already, unless you're alluding to something different.
yeah. I mean, break the news here. This is the place to do
Yeah.
it. I mean, I think that this area of like targeted personalized coaching is really interesting. We actually launched something within anyone who wants to can go to Knapsack and try our free product to see how our agents work. And the agent that people are most excited about is Daily Coach, which literally pulls
It is
from
so
your
cool.
email, your calendar, your meeting notes, your CRM, and tells you every morning what you should focus on that day. And
Right.
basically, because models can reason now, it's like having a high-powered consultant advising you on what you should be doing on a regular basis. Yeah, it's actually really powerful.
That's all.
And so I think this is going to expand, I think, pretty dramatically. I think we're going to see a lot of versions of this out there because this is for the first time we can actually have a intelligence looking at your data and providing very targeted feedback, which has never happened before. Usually, typically you go in for a review with your boss at the end of the quarter or half year and they give you the shit sandwich where they're like, yeah, in February 1st, you said this thing and it's been bothering me ever since. So having like real time feedback is really, really powerful. I like
So,
that
Mark, can I
direction.
ask? Let me ask a knapsack question, and then I want to give some kudos to John that I missed an opportunity to do so earlier. So, the knapsack question is this: I use the Daily Coach. I think it's fantastic. I think everybody should try it. But can you? Because I know you can build your own naps. Can you customize it a little bit so that it's a little more goal aware? Right? Like you just brought up the example of like, maybe I'm an employee at a firm and my boss gave me certain goals or something like that, and so now it's like keep these goals in mind when you're helping me plan my day and and beyond.
Yeah, we've had people do that actually. So you can fork any of the naps. So you can actually go in there, take the prompt, and the prompt is open, so you can basically take it and you can customize and create your own version of the nap. And so, if a firm uses OKRs, for example, or some firms that our clients use EOS, which is the entrepreneurial operating system, you can basically finesse the prompt to say, look at my goals and tell me what I should be doing based on those goals. You don't even have to write out the goals. You can say, look at my goals within my Google Drive or within my cloud drive, and it'll actually figure out what those goals are. And so it's sort of evergreen. But yeah, that's what makes it really powerful. for the first time, you can have it be basically targeting a certain outcome and figuring out the best way to get to that outcome, which is really powerful.
I'm going to repeat something that I said earlier before I get to my kudos to John here, which is I think so much of the challenge that we have in our space when you have a platform like Knapsack and plenty of others is that they're capable of doing so much, and it's always like, well, what do I pick? What do I volunteer to you is like what it can do. I think that's
Yeah.
the challenge that a lot of the different AI tools
Yeah.
struggle with, that is like, how do I market this? Because it can do, oh, you want it to be your daily coach? It could do that. You want it to just take notes? It can do that. Oh, you want it to summarize this? It can do that. Like, the answer is like,
Yeah,
oh, it
no,
can do
I think
almost
you're 100%
anything. It
right.
just
I think
can't
a
flip
lot of us are
pancakes for you,
marketing,
right?
a lot of us are marketing Windows without the Microsoft Office suite, right? And like, Microsoft did roll out the Office suite first, which is really important. I think that's why note takers took off, because it was an application that had an immediate benefit for people.
It
So
made
there
it
was like
simple.
a thing. Yeah, simplified a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anyway, so what I was gonna comment on to you, John, is, I really wanted to give you a kudos because maybe you're not the singular product, but like there are very few, I think, that are actually trying to help advisors get better or the firm improve. Most of them are really just focused on efficiency. They just want to do the same thing a little faster, and we're never validating that it's the right way to do that thing, right? And I'll go back to my PDF example. We're just filling in PDFs faster than you could do it by hand. Okay, better. Definitely better. Is that really the right way to do it? But with your personal coaching and some of the other things that I've seen in there and the different feedback and the management scorecards and stuff, that's really looking to improve, to up your game. And I think that's frankly like the story, the sell. The features support it. I think, if I were over at Focal, I think I'd be talking about how we help you up your game.
Absolutely. Yeah. Have that level of insight to be able to truly toggle on and off, what's working, what's not within the practice. And so for the first time, we're basically pulling the curtains back and we're giving full visibility into exactly how it is that these conversations are happening, what's working, what's not. Management has clear perspective on where we can improve. And every advisor now has a personalized battle plan on how do I continue, to really strike towards that goal of being the best that I can be. But this is inning 1 and 2, right? There's so much more that we can do with this data, with this information. And when you think through the broader challenges that firms have today, whether it's on the top of funnel side or the throughput for individual advisors, the goal here is to really up level both that prospecting capability for those intro calls, but also then if you're halfway through an annual check-in with a client, being able to have that recognition that, oh man, 2 years ago, this client mentioned that they've got a kid named Sally and another named Jim. And, now she's turning 59 and a half. Are there other products in my portfolio that I should be considering, as it relates to the kids that are now going to college who, are ready for that next step in life? Plus the woman in front of me who's now considering a mortgage. And perhaps there are ways of, bringing her into the fold and incorporating the kids into that conversation for what comes next on her financial plan.
Yeah.
So these are the types of insights that, being able to pull from the context of all the past conversations, a platform like Focal is going to be able to present, and then getting into, that actionability once those plans are in place that we're quite excited about. We actually have right now that we'll be bringing to market very soon as well for Conquest users, the ability to form fill. And so wherever you're at in Conquest, we'll be able to just auto detect and then populate fields of information with the browser agent. So a lot of goodness coming soon with
Nice.
Focal on our end.
Nice.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna actually dig into some war stories from the front lines. You're out there preaching the gospel, trying to close $10 billion plus AUM RAAs. I think your pitch is very clear. I'm curious to hear, and you don't have to name names, although if you do, it'd be really spicy and exciting for the podcast. What is the most shocking thing you experienced on the front lines in terms of people's understanding of AI or the potential? And what is the most frustrating aspect of that sort of experience? And maybe let's balance it with like the most joyful aspect. I would love to just hear some like specific stories just to give people a sense of what it's like to try to get this out into the world.
Yeah, I thought one of the more interesting themes that we've seen pop up on a couple of occasions now in the early days of performance coaching, when that was out in the wild, a lot of the advisors were like, and this was more on the independent side than at larger firms, were sharing, there's no way that's going to be a useful feature for me. I already have my processes. I know exactly what need to be doing and saying with my clients. I've got this, right? And so they purchased Focal for the efficiencies of the note taking and the meeting summaries and the CRM sync and all that other good jazz. And then what we hear on like the mid trial check in call or like the close call is, wow, well, that was all great and helpful. Like this whole coaching thing that you
Yeah.
guys have brought to the table, that was game changing for me. I didn't realize I was a bottom quartile performer. I didn't realize I was scoring a 2 out of 5 on active listening, right?
Yeah.
And then
John,
when
that
they start,
resonates.
Like 80% of drivers think they're above average. This is like this is
Yeah.
what we're talking
Well,
about here.
that
Exactly.
resonates with something. I was in an in-person meeting recently with an advisory firm. They'd recently brought on some new advisors, and we were discussing kind of like what does the future voice of this firm look like, right? Like how are you going to engage with your clients? It's going to be more unified. Does each advisor get to kind of handle it the way they want to handle it, or is this a little bit more McDonald's, right? You can get the number two anywhere. Maybe poor choice number two, whatever. I always like the double cheeseburger meal. Anyway, childish stuff aside, where I'm going with this is the advisor said, well, one of the advisors said, well, I have the way I do it. I've been doing it this way for 20 years. And my response was, so you think you perfected it 20 years ago and it didn't warrant any adjustment since?
yeah, the car model hasn't changed.
That's impressive.
Sorry to break it to you, James.
Yeah. Yeah, like I knocked it out of the park 20 years ago. No
Yeah.
need to
And
change.
the world
The
hasn't changed
mentality
at
that
all.
if it's
So-
not broken, don't fix it, right? That is a very, I think, rigid perspective on the world that
Mhm.
misses sort of all of the incremental gains that could be made with a growth mindset of,
Yeah.
I'm doing this thing, I'm seeing success, great. Could I be better? Could I be growing AUM? Could I be taking more clients? And that's the mindset that I think the next generation of advisors do a really impressive job fostering. When you get into like the next gen community conversations, they are, eager, they're hungry, and they're wanting to do everything that they can to either take over, the practice that they're currently in, or maybe spin
Yeah.
off and do their own thing. And I've just got a ton of respect for those that come at it from the vantage point of, I want to be, the very best that I can be. That fire in the belly, that's a trait that I hope that more of us would have, frankly speaking.
I hear you on that. You
Yeah.
mentioned next gen in a totally different context. Well, not entirely, but where I'm going to ask is, look, you're a founder of an AI, native company. I don't know what the right term is, but an AI company. And so on the forefront of kind of what's going on. So either in wealth management or beyond, not specifically Focal. What's next in AI? What are we going to see in 7? And for the record, this is mid-January 2026 at the time of this recording.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting when you look more broadly at AI. I think it's misunderstood by different segments pretty dramatically. Ultimately, of course, I'm bullish on it, right? I think midterm, you see resource constraints on chips and energy. Are going to be a capacity concern for some of the space. Not stock trading advice here, but happy to be an NVIDIA shareholder. I think when it comes to what we see in our space, right? Specifically, it's going to be this continued trend of offloading more and more of the manual, laborious work that advisors, assistants, paraplanners, ops teams, the entire middle and back office have to do today. And I think that there is likely to be more adoption in this space beyond kind of the first wave and the second wave that we've started seeing, in the past months around the Gen AI play, but also actionability with agentic AI. What I have been surprised at is the lack of capability around the agentic pieces within, other types of tools that are out into the wild today. So I think that's certainly an area that we'll be leaning into at Focal. I also think that we're sort of coming out of this trough of disillusionment in wealth around AI, where people are realizing, okay, there's certainly value to be had here. 2026 is there. We need to figure out what it is that we're going to be doing. And a lot of the larger enterprises in particular, looking left and right, they're starting to see dominoes fall, and they're realizing, hey, we're not the first or even the fast follower here to be doing this. If we don't do this, we're going to be falling behind because we're not seeing the efficiency gains, the 10 hours per advisor, or the increase in client capacity that their competitors are seeing. So I do think that the benefits and the boons here do sort of aggregate to the fast movers, and those that are thinking about it with compliance first perspective.
Yeah.
Certainly top of mind. That was one of the big factors for Focal out of the gate, was ensuring that we were building everything up to, core snuff code of conduct for the enterprise perspective, well beyond a SOC 2 Type 2, right? I mean, Clay, one of my co-founders, he started his career at a broker-dealer that was bought by Goldman, and then he was early at DocuSign and Chainalysis. And so having that perspective from an institutional lens on how do you build for enterprise, it's a very different motion from a product and a security standpoint, but then also like, and then how is it that some of the go-to-market motions as well end up playing out? I could go
Yeah.
down that rabbit hole too, James.
Yeah, I know Mark's going to pivot to the rapid fire because we're getting short out of time, but I want to make a quick comment on the trough of disillusionment because we've referenced that a bunch of times. For me, like I struggle with I understand how in mass we're kind of there, but for me, for anybody who's been doing anything with AI, I struggle to see how anyone actually ended up there and that part of the cycle. Because for me, it's like the first time somebody flipped on a light switch and saw a light go on with electricity in the light bulb and was like, I don't think that'll be a thing. Like, I don't know how you look at something game changing like that and go, I just don't see how it's going to be that useful.
Yeah. Yeah. It is the next big wave. I mean, you look at any big tech evolution, right? We were talking earlier about horse and buggy to car, car to airplane on the transportation spectrum. Yeah, I mean, you look at enterprise SaaS, even with the advent of like CRMs and communication tools like Slack, and now you look, there are vertical specific tools that help out with things like outbounding. But if you don't adopt these tools, right, you're operating at a magnitude of efficiency less than what you could be. And as a platform player of really any industry that you're operating in, being able to make sure that your tech is current is going to, I would argue, be one of the most important competitive moats that you can continue to build as an organization longer term. And I think in tandem with that, and this is going to be a juicy comment, I think a lot of the build versus buy mentality of the legacy guard is totally antiquated at this point. If you're trying to build out a lot of these systems of AI and sort of own it end to end in house, you're going to be 3 years too late with outdated capabilities that just don't work because of the speed at which AI is evolving. The foundation models that everything are built on top of right now, you're going to be missing the boat, plus the resource constraint beyond sort of the time to value, right? There's
Yeah.
the cost of heads and everything else that comes
Yeah.
with.
I totally agree. I think the trough of disillusionment is sort of embedded in the human psyche. There's this great Louis C.K. interview with Conan O'Brien. I encourage listeners to look it up. Everything is awesome, but nobody's happy. It just talks about, for example, when Wi-Fi on planes came out, he was on a plane, and then they basically said the Wi-Fi is now not working, and his neighbor was like, "This is BS." It's like, you were just told about this thing 5 minutes ago, and you didn't even know it could exist, and now you have this entitlement and expectation that it should work flawlessly, right?
I still don't think it's gotten much better, frankly.
Yeah, well, things will change. But actually, let's pivot to rapid fire. I do have a rapid fire question here from Joe Moss. Let me just look it up here. Are you
almost made
building
it
a
through a whole episode
CRM?
and didn't bring up Joe Moss.
I know. Are you building a CRM, John?
That is a fantastically loaded question. I think ultimately AI meeting tools, CRMs, evolved dramatically over the coming years. So they just look very different than they do today. We are not trying to build a CRM. What we're doing is working with them, overlaying those existing tools today. I think that legacy tools that don't keep up with an AI native backbone, they just become obsolete. And so I think the way of the world for technology just evolves. And the next wave of platforms has a very different set of capabilities and relationships with one another than what you've historically seen.
So not yet building a CRM, but we will see. And I guess I'll do one more, and then I'll pass it to James. Most underhyped and overhyped in this space?
Man, yeah, I think the most overrated AI sort of hype term for sure is agents and agentic AI. I think a lot of people misunderstand what it means to really build out an agentic system, and people are referring to either data aggregation or content generation, Gen AI, right, as agentic AI. I hear that regularly being used to describe I hear agentic AI being used to describe a chatbot or an assistant that doesn't take action. And that is not agentic AI. The most underrated AI, it's actually quite interesting because if I give you my straight answer here, I think everything going on in the intersection of deep tech, robotics, and AI is pretty darn impressive, and not enough people are paying attention to that more broadly. Does that impact our space? No, because we're built on human trust, right? But I do think that the world is going to change dramatically in the next 10 years when it comes to manual labor.
So here's mine. What is your favorite AI tool you use personally that has nothing to do with vocal?
Shame on me, Chat GPT. Oh, yep.
What's after that? What's a second favorite one that's not
Yeah,
Claude?
have you guys heard of Fixer by any chance? It's an
Yeah,
email
Picture AI, the
tool.
email one.
Yeah, I've dabbled with that one. They've got some good stuff. Claude Code Command Line is a prominent, combination for those that want to get nitty-gritty with it. I'm hoping to dive deeper on that myself here.
Well, they just came out with Claude Cowork, which is like the more user friendly. You have to be on the max plan; it's $100 a month, but like the more user friendly, accessible Claude Code, not for coding. Which
Yeah,
is
have
the way
you
I'm
dabbled
using
much
Claude
with it?
Code
What's your take?
constantly. So I
Yeah,
already use it for everyday tasks constantly.
awesome. What's your take on Max, James? Have you had a chance to experiment with it yet?
Wait, I'm sorry, max being what?
The $100 Claude service.
The $100, I feel like if you're someone using AI, like it's a no-brainer. You should be using it. But start out on the $20 plan unless you need features they don't have and figure out if you're hitting usage limits. But
Totally.
I'm on these threads all the time with coders and stuff saying they're hitting limits on like the $200 max plan, which is X the usage. And I'm like, you're doing something wrong. Like you're definitely doing something wrong. I code 3 or 4 different things side by side, hours a day. I'm running things in Claude Code overnight. I'm running Claude Code web from my phone. I'm virtually never hitting limits. I
Yeah.
paid
Last thing,
$3 in extra usage in like the past 6 months.
yeah. I did want to comment just briefly on the CRM call out earlier. Having had deployed in past lives, now Salesforce, Copper, HubSpot, anybody that's trying to build a CRM, like that is a multi-year process. It's going to take a very, very, very long time to do that right, and then to compete with legacy incumbents who are also building additional capabilities. We're looking at it from how do we overlay these tools and
Mm,
make them more efficient, more capable, ultimately unlocking the value of the CRM and being able to then action it across all of your other advisor tools as well. So you don't have 15 different places you're trying to update the address, right?
mm.
You've got Focal that understands what's in your CRM and which is your source of truth. And yes, we are piping data to the CRM and we look at it from a symbiotic relationship, but then we're able to pull and action that data in other places as well.
Got it. Yeah.
All right.
So building a CRM and wanting to scare other people from building a CRM as well. Got it.
That's going to be the death of me over here.
That's what I heard too, Mark.
Well,
That's
Fox APIs have now been rescinded.
yeah.
That'll come alongside the 5 billion fundraise, Mark. Okay.
Exactly. I got it. I got it.
All right. Well, John,
Go ahead.
where I think I'm probably going to say what you were going to say, Mark, which is, John, where can people learn more about you and Focal AI?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at john@meetwithfocal.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, John L. Connell. You can take a look at our website at meetwithfocal.com. We've got all the information there that might be interesting to pique your fancy. But otherwise, gentlemen, I appreciate the time. This has been fun.
Thank you very much
Blast having you on.
for being a good sport and really appreciate it.
Always. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Take care, everybody.